afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today, it is a glorious day in Britain. After many weeks of rain, we finally have a bit of sunshine and the perfect opportunity to take this car out for a spin. And I also want to talk about, just give the car a bit of a review, having owned it for the last 8 weeks. What do I think about it, and what are the things I like and dislike about the car? So first, and I'm also going to do a bit of an experiment. I've just ordered some smart glasses, and I'm going to see whether or not that allows me to film myself driving in a legal way, and it's also that it hopefully isn't too pixelated. Now, it's only a 5 megapixel camera on there, so you can expect the screen resolution's not going to be great, but we'll see how it goes. But before I set off, I just want to talk about some of the things I like and dislike about this car and its interior cabin, and it's just from a driver's point of view. So, where do I begin? I think this car's not been put together very well, is an understatement. Having said that, you can forgo all of that just because of the way it drives. I think this car, to me, feels like a TVR of the 90s, which were great cars to drive. Really, they were, but they weren't put together very well, neither. And I see this as something similar to that. When I compare it to a CL or a 6 Series, yeah, definitely. These things, they don't really feel very premium at all. So yeah, you've got your home button that just takes you to the home screen, and this is a touchscreen display. I don't mind this too much because I still feel like I'm winning, because mine's an 08 model, and I know that they had this crappy dated system all the way until 2015, so I feel like I'm winning. Because had I bought this car in 2015 and paid, I don't know, 40, 50,000 pounds, 60,000 pounds for this car, and then ended up with this, I would have been very annoyed. But because I've bought this car in 2023 for 9,000 pounds, I think fair enough. You get what you pay for. So I'm not that annoyed about it. I've already spoken about the key and how flimsy it is. Feels like it's come out of a Kinder egg. It's made of plastic, flimsy, light. You wouldn't even know it if it dropped out of your pocket. The other thing I don't like is, look at the way it just unceremoniously drops. Oh, that's terrible. So yeah, don't like that. But hey, I said, think TVRs and you'll be fine. At least it lines up properly when it is in. And I do like the leather dash on this car. It does definitely make it feel like a lot better. I know that the headlining's known to sag on these. Thankfully, this one is in good order. But what I don't like is these vanity mirrors, which yeah, they do look a bit kind of flimsy, but maybe I'm nitpicking. What else? Nowhere on this car can I tell what temperature I'm at. Now, I don't really like to give the car the beans until I know that it's fully up to temperature. Now, I just don't know when that is with this car, so I just kind of have to guesstimate and know when it feels like it's warm. So that's the other thing I don't like. What I do like about this car is the positioning of these flappy paddles over here, so you can change gears, as you can see here and here. And I quite like that. I know some people have moaned about, oh, you could easily hit them accidentally, but I don't mind. That's never happened to me. I quite enjoy that. So that's good. I also don't like this armrest. I just feel like it's, maybe I haven't got used to it, but it just feels like it's a bit too far back, and it could have been further forward. And it's even further back when you open this. So when you open that or close it, you just, you got to choose, either have a cup holder or have an armrest. You can't have both, and that's a bit of a pain. So there's that. I also don't understand why they put an ASL button here. Why? I mean, that is a speed limiter. Why wouldn't they just put it here somewhere where the rest of the cruise control is? It's like much ado about nothing, really. Such a big button. I thought, ooh, that must be really useful. Just a speed limiter, and well, just don't understand why it's been given such a prominent position in the car. considering its little used feature. Also, yeah, this one, you know, this control knob, a lot of people would jump into your car and they'll start turning this thinking this controls the volume. It's actually this that controls the volume for the stereo. And I just feel like, could have been bigger, could have been smaller, but hey, it is what it is. What else about the car? I've already spoken about the window switch and how flimsy that is, but as you can see, the Gorilla Tape is holding out really well. And then you've got your parking sensors, which are temperamental when they get wet or old. I've just had mine replaced, so I'm not getting the constant beeping, but generally the parking sensors can be tricky. So if you're buying one of these, definitely check the parking sensors. Okay, I guess there's nothing else for it but to go for a drive and see if I can talk about the driving characteristics of this car. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to test was really at low speeds, when you go over speed humps. I really like the fact that this car's higher than a CL and higher than a 6 Series. So you're less likely to scrape the underside of it when you go over speed humps. I'll give you an example. As I turn this corner and I go left, these speed humps would always scrape the underside of my CL500, always do it to the 6 Series as well. Nothing on this. So despite this car being quite flat and low, it's actually quite high off the ground. You've got a decent ride height and you don't struggle. Like with most performance cars, this is pretty high, this speed hump, but you can see I've gone over it, no scrapes, nothing. So I really like that about this car. So just driving along, one of the things I quite like about this car is that that noise, obviously, but also I like the way that it just decides to just stay flat, no matter what speed I turn this car at. I get a great feeling that the car remains flat, hardly any body roll. Really, the ABC struts and the ABC suspension system of a Mercedes for SL55 AMG or CL55 AMG or CL500, it just doesn't seem to, it seems like a very complicated suspension system, but it doesn't keep the car as flat as this car stays flat on the CAT's suspension system. This car is fitted with the CAT suspension system, and it's absolutely great. It feels really robust when I go over potholes or when I go over speed humps, like I mentioned earlier. I just don't get that problem. It's just absolutely brilliant. So the car just stays flat, and I love that. So there's that. People also go on about the sound of this car, but the reality is you don't actually hear this car's sound much. It's all behind you, and it's actually quite quiet. So, you know, people who are looking at hearing a loud, thunderous noise from the... Oops, I made a mistake there. Sorry, love. Okay. So, people who are expecting a loud, thunderous noise from their car, it's just not going to happen until you take one of the cats out or go for an aftermarket exhaust. It's actually quite muted in here, and I prefer that because I don't want a car that's loud and leery until it's really high up in the revs. So another thing I wanted to mention about this car is about engine sound and revs, and I think that it's a bit of a myth that this car sounds loud. It doesn't. This car's actually pretty quiet, and the reason for that, it has so much torque that by the time you gain any speed, it's changed gear, and you know, you're already breaking the law when you're only doing 2,000 revs or 1,500 revs. Like I'm gonna do 40 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour along here, but I'm not even getting above 2,000 revs. So therefore, the car's very quiet even when you're driving it pretty briskly. and that's a thing. So just bear that in mind, that unless you're going to paddle shift yourself and drop a few gears like I'm doing now, you're not really going to hear it. And I'm just going to roll the window down. So even if I roll the window down and I'm in second gear now, I'm already at 50 and I've got to back off, so I guess it's not as loud as myth would have you believe, so, or as legend would have you believe. So I would just say, if you're buying this car because you think you're going to get some loud brute, you're not. You're going to get a quick brute, and it's got a reasonable exhaust note, but it's not loud by any stretch of the imagination. So now I've just put it into sport mode. As you can see, I love this J-gate where I can just switch whenever I'm feeling a little bit more purposeful. And then I like this little bit of road because it's the national speed limit. And you can see very quickly got to, well, nearly 70 there. And had it not been for this traffic, I probably would have stopped exactly at 70 because I'm a law-abiding citizen. Okay, so then the key differentiators, or the key characteristics of this car for me are A, the way this car goes, obviously, but then also driving around these windy country lanes. I think the suspension is really robust, so it's a lot more no nonsense than your ABC equivalent, and it just deals with potholes and rougher surfaces like I have around here, unfortunately, in Beaconsfield. It copes with that a lot better than the ABC suspension system. So there's that. Oh, just my luck to be stuck behind a learner in a Polo. So yeah, there's that. Then there's also the fact that this car, just the way it feeds the power through, and the steering just feels, it's not too direct, but at the same time it's not too disconnected. It's a very happy medium, so it's not overly soft to the point that you can't feel the road, but it's not overly hard to the point that you feel like you're driving a go-kart. It is a sweet spot in the middle, and and it's very hard to describe, but the steering feels really well weighted, just the way I would like it, and I could happily do thousands of miles in this car and not get tired. So there's that aspect of the car. And then as you take a corner, when you corner this car, I wouldn't say it's as flat as a 911, but it's not far off. Another example of the torque that this car has to offer, if I'm going uphill now, I could be in the 4th gear, and still when I put my foot down, I get an immediate response. It's just uncanny how much torque there is in the lower rev range. You'll see, even when I'm at 1,000 RPM, I've got pretty much instant torque. It's throughout the rev range, and that I've never seen. It's hard to describe, but I would say, like with the Mercedes, when you put your foot down, it feels like there's a level of compression that needs to build before I get to the torque. But with this car, I feel like it's always there, and it's hard to explain, but yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. I would say that this car overall then it feels like a really efficient, well put together tool to drive. It's a driver's car for sure, and it just does what you want it to do when you want it to do it. So yeah, I just truly do love this car. Looking at these country roads, I can't think of a better car that I'd want to be in this price bracket. caveat, in this price bracket, and the price bracket being 12 to 14,000 pounds for a good one of these. I can't think of anything better really that I'd want to do this on a summer's day. Perhaps maybe a convertible, put the top down and let the breeze in, but that's about it. So overall, I guess it's got a really reliable engine. They're known to go for well over 100,000, 150,000 miles, not a problem, as long as you've looked after them. They've got, and this is important, they've got very reliable suspension, very robust, very resilient, deals with these country lanes really well, better than the Mercs and the BMs. Now the BMs probably are just as resilient, but they're not as comfortable. What sets this apart from the BMW M Sports is the M Sport suspension is very resilient, but it's not comfortable at all. It's horrible. Whereas this car, the suspension setup on this car is that fine line between resilient and comfortable, and that's exactly what I want in the suspension of a car, especially on these beautiful country roads. Oops. And then of course there is the way that it looks. It is a great bit of design, automotive design. Hats off to Mr. Callum, who designed this car. He's quite good with a pencil, isn't he? If only he'd given it to somebody who wasn't on the verge of bankruptcy, like Ford were, to put this thing together, and it would have been a great car that I suspect would have been out of my budget, even at this age. And the fact that it's been put together by Ford on a shoestring means that they've depreciated a lot, and I've been able to afford to get one. So I'm quite happy in some ways. Can't win them all, can you? So yeah, that's it. This is the first drive of Just Cruising, and may there be many more. Adios, amigos.